Well, as you can see, it's project time again, and this time I'm going to make another shadow box. And take a look. I still got all kinds of vintage antique lures that I need to display. And I don't know, I just got tons of them. I gotta do something with them. I'm not knocking my old frames, that that old project where I took some frames from Hobby Lobby, glued them together and made a backboard to it and attach the lures on it. But I want to do something different now. In fact, I kind of want to start from scratch, do everything from scratch. I did an earlier project where I did buy a shadow box and I embellished it with birch tree bark, and it turned out pretty neat. So my goal is to make a shadow box from scratch and use birch tree bark for embellishment. So guys, the first step is to pick out the items I want to display and then lay them out into some previous frames that I've already worked on. That way I can figure out the layout and just how big I need to make the frames. And in this case, I actually used the dimensions of this frame here. And then of course I took some pictures so that when the frames are made, I'll know how to put everything together. But yep, it's time to go shopping again. So of course went back to Hobby Lobby, right? That's where I get a lot of stuff. And in this case I had to pick up some burlap cloth, some foam poster board, and some regular poster board. After that I went over there to Lowe's and picked out my lumber. And of course this is the boards I'm going to be using to fabricate the frame. Of course, as always, I need more glue, right? And of course that silicone glue. But this time I need a miter saw because I'm going to be cutting some angles, and I chose a skill saw. It was really cheap. I mean, it's like 120 something bucks. So it did the job. So let's get back to the shop, or of course my garage. And you see this frame here and how it has an indentation, and I need to create that same effect on these lumber pieces. So I got out the router and pulled my boards out of the truck, of course, and first thing I gotta do is get this label off because it has some staples in there, and I don't want to run my router through some of that metal staples because that could be a bad thing. So I'm doing my routing, and now you can see I have this indentation or a lip where I can set the backboard to. I ripped through all that lumber and set it aside, and now it's time to cut my angles. Of course, it's just a simple 45-degree angle. And I put them all together, and well, it's time to do some gluing and stapling. And to hold everything together, of course, I use my band clamps. And I just used the Elmer's wood glue for this. Had to make sure everything was square. And just had to wait a while for that glue to dry. And now I got my joiner. So if you ever look at frames, you'll see there's this metal staple thing that gets embedded into the corners there. Well, I finally have my own staple. It's like a V shape, and it goes in there and just adds more strength to the frame. Time to paint. Of course, the first thing I have to do is put a coat of primer on it. So again, I used the old Kills for primer, and then what I did was I got some of that Flexstone paint and sprayed it on there to have a kind of a rough, bumpy finish. Now I wasn't going for oh, time to take a break. Hey, these are my favorite drinks here. You guys ought to try them out. But after I put on that Flexstone paint, it was time to paint my different colors. I was thinking about, you know, a green, a maroon, and of course a blue. I was thinking about the blue for the ice fishing artifacts. And time to work on this birch tree bark. So I found this stuff online from Save on Crafts, and it finally came in, and I had to cut it in strips. I think I made mine like 1.5 inches. And you can easily cut this with some heavy-duty scissors. So now, time to fabricate the backboard. And in this case, I'm using some of that foam board I got at Hobby Lobby, and I just made sure I cut to fit so it fits in that little lip area or indentation. And of course, once I did that, I flipped it over and I started cutting pieces of cork board to be 2 layers deep, and glued them together with that silicone glue. Now I'm trying to pick out the burlap for the different colors. I thought the gold went well with the green and the green with the red. And did make sure I cut the burlap, you know, like at least 3 inches bigger, you know, all the way around. And this time I didn't use Elmer's glue to glue it on there. I used the silicone glue. And I just hand pressed it on there and put some wax paper on top, and then just put a bunch of weights to press down and put some pressure on there. And I did it for the same procedure for the second one, and of course the same procedure for the third one. Then it's time to test fit it. Looks like everything fit just fine. So again, like you seen me do this process before in other videos, I just have to use Elmer's glue, glue the burlap around the lip, and then flip the excess over and lay down a bunch of glue, and then put a poster board on top of that I had pre-cut for the correct size. And then of course I put all these weights on there, and I'm doing the same thing with this green one. And here I'm applying the black poster board, so you have something that looks nice on the back basically. And again, I'm gluing the lips together, then flipping the excess over and laying out the glue and putting on the poster board. So now it's time to glue these birch tree strips that I've cut up onto the front of the frame. But first I need to score the front of the frames. I just did this with a utility knife. That way the glue has more surface area to attach to. And all I did was just use a bunch of clamps to you know, glue and attach the bark to it, to the front. This is a pretty long, drawn-out process. I only had so many clamps, and yeah, I went back to the hardware store and bought more, believe it or not. But we have a problem. The birch tree bark was real flimsy and very weak, and I had to strengthen it. So I had a bunch of scrap foam board that I used to strengthen it. I just cut strips, kind of measured it out as you can see here, and cut it out and glued it, and did this over and over and over again for all four sides for each of the shadow boxes. It's just cut, glue, and clamp and wait. Cut, glue, clamp, and wait. Of course, after it was all done, I had a lot of this excess foam board sticking out, so I had to just take some scissors and start cutting off all that excess. So here, like a normal picture frame, you have all these tabs that hold the backboard in. Well, now I finally have my own tab gun, which I got off of Amazon.com. So here I am, I'm just playing around with it, make sure I know how to use it. And it just puts that little tab in there. So I did that with all of my shadow boxes. I think I put like 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, 3 on the sides for each one. But a lot of that glue from the poster board that I used to strengthen the bark dripped onto my paint job, and so when I took the glue off, it stripped out some paint. So it's time to do some touch-up work here. So I just made some little bowls out of aluminum foil and sprayed some spray paint in there, and just used a Q-tip to touch up everything. And this process did work. In some cases I had a lot of touch-up to do. Well, we're almost done. We still have to attach our hangers. Now that's done. The hangers are attached, and we gotta flip them over and figure out where we want to put all these artifacts and lures. So here's the finished product, and I brought out my pictures again to help me locate all the items. Again, I took straight pins and flipped them over, made my own little staple, cut the heads off, and I used those little homemade staples to, of course, attach all the lures and artifacts onto. And that's pretty much the finished shadow boxes. So guys, until next time, y'all take care and stay tuned for the next project.